now on to Linda Blade. She's from Canada. She's a sports performance coach, co-founder of International Consortium on Female Sport. Her recent notable achievements are she collaborated with Canadian journalist Barbara Kay in 2021, writing the book Unsporting: How Trans Activism and Science Denial Are Destroying Sports. Established International Consortium on Female Sport, which is a very important advocacy group, and then also successfully convinced the Conservative Party of Canada to pass a policy resolution recognising sex-based rights for women in September 2023. So we could go on and say more, but thank you so much, Linda, and over to you.
It's been quite a ride since January 31st. Just so amazing, because just the Premier speaking out and questioning the dogma, and seeing that 78-80% of the public is in agreement with her, and every time the opposition is trying to vilify her, there's a flood of messages now saying no, the Premier is right to be questioning this. It's like the dam has broken. I had a chance to meet with the Premier, and thank goodness for Eva and her colleagues for breaking the ice and meeting with the Premier. I think that made a huge impact. And in fact, right after that meeting, I got an email from Rob Anderson saying, could you meet with the Premier after the COP, whatever that is, that meeting, the environment meeting in Saudi Arabia in early December. She was going to come home, and they wanted a meeting before Christmas. So imagine December 22, 3 days before Christmas, the Premier could have come back from Saudi Arabia. She was probably still jet lagged. The importance of this issue for her obviously was very, very high on her list of priorities, because the entire government office I drove down to Calgary. She said, well, you can do it by Zoom. I said, no, I want to be in the room with her. So I went down to Calgary. I had a nice little dinner with Ava. It was really nice, but it was like last minute. Got in there, and the government office, the whole building was empty. It was the Premier and me, pretty much, because everybody had gone home for Christmas. And she really listens. And, she has been, she was a former radio talk show host. So her you can tell she's listening. She's asking the right questions. She's got this little notebook. She's just writing notes. She asks questions. She writes. So she's really listening, and she really, really wants to do something right here. And so what I'm going to do, I know we are short on time, so I'm just going to read the section of her speech about women's sports, because that's, of course, what I met about sports issue with her. And so in her January 31st announcement or video, she said this: our government needs to deal with the emerging issue of unfair disadvantages that young women and girls are experiencing when competing with biologically stronger. Now, she uses this term, transgender female athletes. Well, I would say from now on, when I say that term, transgender female athletes, I'm just going to say TFA men, okay, in sporting competitions. I strongly believe that those who were born male, have transitioned or identify as female, are owed the opportunity to meaningfully participate in sports. However, there are obvious biological realities that give TFA men massive competitive advantage over women and girls. It is not beneficial for those women, including those who are transgender, for this divisive and sometimes dangerous situation to occur. That is why the government of Alberta will work with sporting organizations active in our province to ensure that women and girls have the choice to compete in a women's only division in athletic competitions and are not forced to compete against biologically stronger TFA men. We will also work with those same sporting organizations to ensure transgender athletes are able to meaningfully participate in the sport of their choice through the expansion of co-ed or other gender-neutral divisions for athletic competitions. That's like the gist of it. It was fantastic, although, of course, as I pointed out, the terminology was a little bit odd. The one thing I want to draw your attention to, there's this, I'm going to repeat the sentence. It is not beneficial for those women, she's talking about females, including those who are transgender, for this divisive and sometimes dangerous situation to occur. This was one of the points I made in our meeting. I'm saying that there are female athletes, a lot of them now, who are younger and they're non-binary or trans. They identify, but they stay in women's sports, and we don't have any problem with that. we do accept trans in sport as long as they're born female and they're not cheating by taking testosterone, right? So when she said that sentence, I think a lot of people miss the implication that what she's saying is, if you're born female and you identify as trans, having males come into that is also discriminatory against trans who are born female. So that's a really important point, and she hadn't thought of that before our meeting, and that's, all obviously. So I'm just going to say very quickly in summary, what's going to happen next, and this might be an answer to the question about there was a question to Lara about how you're going to implement in the schools. In this province of Alberta, I had this experience where back in 2003, I had to write a physical education manual for track and field athletics, like at the elementary school level. And they have these, what they call these third-party educational modules. And if the current Ministry of Education accepts it and thinks that your module for teacher learning is good or acceptable or somehow advantageous, they let you have that. They take it on themselves to incorporate it into the curriculum, which is what has been happening on the other side of this with the LGBTQ, like the trans activists, the trans ideology, gender ideology. Those modules have been incorporated into schools. So what Lara is trying to do is exactly that thing, where consult with the ministry. All of Lara's, whatever's in the school's guidance proposed document, obviously might not end up being verbatim in the school curriculum, but through consultation with the Alberta government, it is possible to push back and have this other learning module, for the teachers. But obviously that will be vetted carefully. And that's the other thing that the Premier had said in her announcement, was that the government of Alberta has the right to vet third-party materials. And that drives the LGBTQ, the gender activists crazy, because they don't want the government to have the right to vet their modules in the schools. Anyway, that's a kind of an answer there. But anyway, so there's one other thing I need to clarify. In Canada, we have the 10 provinces and territories. The question of jurisdiction comes up. And Trudeau has stomped all over jurisdiction, but typically in Canada, education, health, and even sports to some degree are the jurisdictions at the provincial level. The power to do anything in those sort of on the ground activities is provincial. And Danielle Smith, what she's done, because Justin Trudeau is so crazy and so dictatorial, she has basically declared sovereignty within Alberta, within Canada. So basically reclaiming the kind of jurisdictions that normally were at the level of the province. And this is important to me in sports, because the national sports governing bodies are trying to push this ideology on the provinces. Like when I was president, I was previously president of Athletics Alberta, and when I would go to national meetings, they were saying we must have full self-ID in sport. I'm saying, no, that's not going to happen in the province of Alberta. And they tell me, oh, well, you're breaking the law. I'm saying, no, in my province, I can do what we feel is right for the sport in our province. And especially now that CEDAW and World Athletics have established, the preeminence of biological sex, now the national governing body is sort of trapped between an international policy that doesn't agree with them, and now the province of Alberta, we can assert our own sovereignty. So it's this jurisdictional fight, which is really important. And I've come to realize in my advocacy that the real power in this is either completely at ground level or at the level of WDI International or UN. I think that we have to be working at both the international level and at the ground level to combat. And this is actually, this is what Martine Rothblatt or all of these original gender ideology zealots were doing. They were inserting themselves at Yogyakarta, and then they did it with the education system at ground level. And so these two levels working in tandem and then squished everybody in between. If we're going to combat this, it has to happen that way again on our side. And I'm grateful for Danielle Smith and the province of Alberta, where I live, to start this process in all seriousness. Now, what's happening though is that we have now that this is my wrap up. Now that we have had Danielle Smith and the province of Alberta, the government of Alberta, indicating they want to move on this issue, it's a race. It's a race in a couple of ways. We need the sport bill to come in as soon as possible, because there are now competitions where males are self-identifying purposely to hurry up and be in women's sports before they are not allowed to anymore. So that's one race going on. So, for example, Anne Andres, the power lifter that has been, bringing turmoil to April Hutchinson and that group, he signed up for a competition. Alberta Powerlifting is going to let him compete as a woman again, June 6th to 9th, I believe, at the Alberta Championships. There's going to be a protest. But anyway, it's going to be a mess if he's allowed to, because, our group's going to be there and the other groups are going to be it's going to be crazy. And so there's that race to try to correct the record before these things happen. And then there's another race. The latest race is Trudeau's trying to bring in the hate speech, the hate crimes bill, or like the online hate bill, BLC C63, I believe it's called. And what their liberals are really out of their minds. So they must be so desperate to impose their will on this, because now they're saying that you could be any Canadian caught espousing hate online could be jailed for life in prison. It's unbelievable. And yet, so the question is, maybe, we need to hurry up and get the province to protect Albertans before the national. I don't know how that's all going to work out. So there's this race between what, the government of Canada is getting more and more extreme. And now Alberta's got to push back quickly to protect its own citizens. So this is where we sit. This is where we sit right now. It's an important time. It's just very interesting. Every day something comes up, and we need to really, really be strong and give Premier Danielle Smith our full support. I don't care if you're left, right, center politically, but when a leader does the right thing on sex-based rights, that is something we need to support. So that's the wrap up. Thank you.